How's it going, friends and family of the internet? Welcome to the Real AF TV podcast, the show about fishing and random takes from the land of 10,000 lakes. I'm one of your hosts, Josh LaBaw. On the other side, we got
Tim Wagner.
Tim. We are going to get into a topic I think that's a big one because if you don't know, if you haven't read any of our literature online, I don't literally mean literature, but if you haven't read anything online about Real AF TV, we are learning ourselves and we like to learn, but we also like to teach. I think teaching is a thing that we're trying to do here and making it fun, making it easy going. So we're going to do tackle box basics, man. How do you start a tackle box? Second half, we are going to talk about the cost of a hobby. Fishing is obviously in there, expensive hobbies, but also how is it affect you like personally, like the cost of a hobby. Fishing is time consuming. You usually need a whole day. How do you do it?
Right. Yeah, and I don't want to scare anybody away. It can be an expensive hobby, but you don't have to spend a lot of money to go fishing.
That's right. And I bet you that when we talk about the tackle box basics, we're going to get into that kind of because when you do the basics, and that's what we're going to try to stick to. Obviously, we can really get into the weeds as you feel needed because you're going to know more, of course. But when I had a tackle box, and that's where I'll start. When I was a kid and I had a tackle box, I had this little hard plastic. You'd flip open the latches in the front, and it would fold back, so there'd be a bottom half and a top half, like literally in half. And then there were just these racks you could put lures in. It was a tiny little box. I'll say like, I don't know, 6-7 inches tall, uh, and it was probably same distance wide,
Yep.
but not quite a rectangle. But then it was longer, maybe like a foot or 13 or 17 inches or something. It's a very small, little compact, like hard plastic Plano
Yep.
tackle box, and that was my basic starter
Yeah.
tackle box.
Yeah. I mean, that's a good place to start. To have a little tackle box, like that's all you really need. If you're just not an avid fisherman, like what's like an occasional fisherman,
Mm-hmm.
like if
Mm-hmm.
you just every once in a while want to get out there, like that's all you need. You don't need any more than that. Like, or even if you just wanted to have one tray. I mean, obviously you need to have your rod and reel and stuff, but like
Mm-hmm.
there's the bigger tackle bags is what I have, still made by Plano because they know what they're doing. But um it's a bag and then it holds a bunch of trays, which are essentially smaller little tackle boxes that you separate out, and then I have one for each style of fishing or whatever, one for my topwater baits and one for my crankbaits and one for my jerk baits and one for my you know terminal tackle, which
Mm-hmm.
terminal tackle is your hooks and weights and all that good stuff. So but
Okay.
all you need is a little guy. You don't need a big guy.
Yeah, like to get started. And, you know, when I was writing down the topics, I put in like someone in their teens, late teens, early 20s, or something like that. Someone who doesn't necessarily have uh, someone who brought them up on fishing, but, they're getting friends or whatever that like to go fishing. You meet them in school, meet them in college, whatever. And it, I guess in a way I was like, well, it's kind of like narrow because also it's a good thing to bring up is like you're a fisherman. You have everything. Like I would say more than your average fisherman. You have a lot of tackle
Oh,
and
for
things as you
sure.
kind of already went through. How would you start or how are you going to start your son Beckett? And does that apply in this sort of starter tackle box situation that we're talking about, or because you're already so in deep that he's just kind of already got a head start?
Well, I mean, he's he's kind of got a head start because I'm not stingy with my stuff. I don't care if people use it. Like
Hmm.
he gets to use anything that I have if he wants to. but he'll definitely have his own tackle box because that's part of the fun of it. Like
Mm-hmm.
to be able to collect your things and put them in there and stuff, and
And have ownership of it, right? Like having that sense of ownership, especially when you're a younger kid, is, I think, a big deal to have that responsibility put on you and feel responsible for it and feel that ownership. There's something different there. Like it makes you feel different about it.
oh yeah, for sure. Like when you're open up your own tackle box to take out your lure to go fishing with it, like, and then you catch a fish, you're just like, yeah, that I did that on my stuff. I that wasn't dad's fancy lure, that was my shit. But
Yeah, for sure.
yeah, I mean, even today, like I'll go to a store and buy lures, not needing them at all. Just it's just fun to buy new stuff, and I always want stuff, and I like stuff, and I like to use new stuff, and but
Hmm.
I don't need any of it. Like if I wanted to catch fish, I could catch fish without having to use any other.
Hmm.
I
No,
I
I
I
know what you're
have
saying.
so much more than I need. Like I don't want to deter anybody from thinking that you need to have all this stuff. It it, it just depends on what level of fisherman you're trying to achieve. Like I have way more than your novice fisherman, but I have
Hmm.
far less than a professional. So
Hmm. Right, right. Somewhere in the middle, and we'll get that, I think, in the second half as we get into like the cost of something like this. And there's there is a cost involved. I mean, it's a hobby, right? Like unless
oh, for
you
sure.
live around people who are willing to hand you down a lot of stuff for your starter tackle box, which we're trying to hand you down the knowledge of how to start a tackle box. We can't fund you, but
Right.
with you said there's these cloth bags like you have that Plano still makes, and then they
Hmm.
make the plastic inserts that go inside. I saw you could get one of these things, and sometimes they're backpacks even.
Yeah.
I think what you have is more like a duffel bag style, right? Where it's kind of like over the shoulder.
Yep. Yeah. Like
Yeah.
bigger than a duffel bag. Even it's like not something you would want to carry around every place.
Okay, right. Yeah. It's big, but it's bigger than a duffel bag even, and it has the over shoulder because it's not a backpack. Like you couldn't strap that thing on and with like two shoulder it or two strap it, you
No,
know?
no, no. You're right.
Yeah. And I don't know how much yours cost. And you don't have to say that. That's not where I'm getting at. But I saw those can cost upwards of $120, but also as low as 30. I mean, would you, for someone who's just getting into it, that's such a huge span for me from to my point of view. I'm like, holy crap, that's a huge gap in cost. So I assume this 121 must come with these plastic boxes inside it already or something. But like, would
Well,
you recommend someone even going in at the 30 range?
I think a lot of them do come with the plastics already in them,
Mm-hmm.
even when they're at the lower price point. But some of
Oh,
those
very
plastic,
good.
some of those plastic inserts can differ too. Like plano, your cheap planos, like they're kind of entry level, just clear, kind of like cloudy white, clear plastic box.
Mm-hmm.
Those things, 7, $8, you get a whole tray or
Mm-hmm.
whatever.
Mm-hmm.
They have ones now that I forget what they're called, but they're like yellow, and they have these little
Hmm.
things that stick up. I'm doing a terrible job explaining it, but they're really good for organizing the tackle, and they're super nice, but they're like $30 a tray.
Oh.
Yeah, so that's, there's a difference in the tray too, but yeah, for sure, going in on a $30 one, I think too, like if you're just getting started and you most likely don't have a boat, maybe you have a kayak, but even with a kayak, like something like you were talking about that's an actual backpack, so you can easily like park your vehicle or your bike. If you're riding a
Mm-hmm.
bike, you slap on
Right.
your backpack tackle box and you
Oh,
can ride
yeah, dude.
easy. Like it makes it easier for you to access water too when you don't
Mm-hmm.
have means of, getting out on the water. If you
Mm-hmm.
if you that's uh, I technically don't have a boat right now, but I we use
Mhm.
my parents, and I have a little tiny boat that I'll be using and stuff, but that makes more sense when you have a big tackle box, like when you have a
Mhm.
boat and you can bring all your gear with. Like if I was trying to bike any place, then
Mhm.
I'd have no chance at bringing my tackle box with me.
Right. Too much weight, it's lopsided, like, it's just not something to like, this is the perfect example of, like, hey, you're a kid in high school, just getting into high school, found some new friends, trying to get fishing, you're gonna take your bike down to the creek or whatever, and the backpack, dude, when you said biking and backpack, I was like, yeah, that's exactly it. That's the perfect example of why I wanted to do this topic is like I'd never even thought of stuff like that because yeah, you thinking about the bigger tackle box now, the bigger investment that you have is it's super heavy. It's awkward to carry, right? Like you're only
Yeah,
meant to carry that shorter distances and get it on a boat.
right, pretty much. I mean,
Yeah.
you could carry it farther if you wanted to, but if you're just getting started, or even not just getting started, like a backpack to go from point A to point B makes a lot of sense because they make some
Mm-hmm.
pretty decent size ones now too, where
Mm,
they're like
mm-hmm. Okay.
legitimate backpacks and you can hold a lot of tackle in those things. So
Nice.
yeah, I would definitely suggest somebody starting out with like a backpack like that because even the little tackle box like you were talking about that you started with, that's
Mm-hmm.
still a handle. Like that's still taking up a hand. A backpack,
Right.
you have your hands free to carry your rod and
Right.
you know take
Rod reel, throw that on your bike, still have two decent grips on it instead of trying to hold a rod and reel and a tackle box and still work the handbrakes.
yeah, exactly. Like we used to
Yeah,
trying to bike
for
down
real.
trying to bike down to the river like holding everything. And then if you try to go any place but a wide open space is like no go. I gotta ride sideways and I'm holding it on the handlebars. Like, well, I need to definitely stop and push my bike because I'm not trying to ride through this forest, break my rod right away.
Right. And so we've talked a lot. I shouldn't say a lot. So that's I think the basics of a tackle box. Is there anything quick about the like these cloth bags with these plastic inserts versus the hard tackle box straight out of the gate? Like, would you have any preference or advice on like why you'd go one way or other than what we've already talked about? Because I feel like the soft bag has soft in the word. I don't know how else to put it, but there's these plastic inserts should be protected. Hard box,
Well, I think it really comes down to just kind of preference and how serious you're going to get about it. Like the real downfall I see with the hard plastic ones is the amount of storage space that you have versus the size. Like even if you get a large one of those with the trays that kind of fold out, you'll have
Mm-hmm.
like three of them and they'll fold out like stairs, so
Yep.
you kind of have them tiered. I can hold so many more lures in my tackle bag that's about the same size as like one of the large ones that
Mm-hmm.
unfolds in the middle and has the two trays that fold out, so it's like stairs going up on both sides. Like
Mm-hmm.
it's just a numbers game, really. It's you don't have to worry about anything getting damaged. Like the bag itself, all those tackle bags have I shouldn't say all of them, but the majority of them have a hard bottom on it. So
Mm-hmm.
it's not like it's super duper flimsy. And once you get the uh inserts in there, that
Mm-hmm.
stiffens it up too. So
Right.
the inserts themselves are pretty sturdy. But that's what I would say is it's just a storage thing. Like the
Mm-hmm.
tackle box that you were talking about, that small one,
Mm-hmm.
or we'll say even a little bit bigger. If you have a little bit bigger one that's about the same size, like comparable to a small backpack, that small plastic one will probably have like unfolds the tray and it has like 2 steps on it,
Mm-hmm.
and those
Mm-hmm.
steps will be like, I don't know, 7, 8 spaces wide.
Yep.
So say that you have like 8 lures on the top, and like we'll say that 8 lures on the top and the bottom. That's 16 lures. Well, I can
Mm-hmm.
hold that in one tray, and I bet your backpack has 2 or 3 trays
Ah,
or
right,
two or
right.
three inserts. And
Mm-hmm.
then one of your inserts can be all your terminal tackle, where there's no real good sectioning in those, or at least there wasn't
Mm-hmm.
when I used to use them. I haven't looked into them for a lot of time,
Right.
but
No,
the terminal tackle on the bottom, like you almost need to have its own like little Tupperware holder to keep it contained because it's just an open space in the bottom.
mm-hmm. Yeah, yeah.
So
No, when I was looking at them for this, I saw that there was still basically the bottom of those hard ones was just open. I don't know if that's like where scissors go, line, uh, Rapalas that you haven't taken out of the
yeah, dude,
package, stuff like
right,
that.
all your bigger
Um,
stuff.
yeah, yeah, because obviously loose hooks down there is just asking to get hurt. That's all I can say about that. Is it seems so dangerous.
Yeah, loose hooks in a tackle box cannot go well, um,
No.
even if they're hanging out the side, which you and me learned trying to fish.
Yes.
The one day I had a loose hook sticking out the side of the tackle box, and I've never like legitimately hooked myself, and I just somehow was trying to step down off of this ledge. We were trying to fish this river, and the hook from outside the bag like went through my leg, and then I
Mm-hmm.
had to have you come over and help because I was like mid step down and the hook went through, and I'm just it wasn't that bad, but I was just kind of stuck there like I can't go
No,
down and I can't go up, and
you didn't see it from my angle. It was bad. Your skin was stretched out because it was legitimately hooked in there. It was pulling it. And the thing is like the shoulder strap of the bag had was on your shoulder and the leg was up in the air. And so you only had the distance of the shoulder strap and the bag because you were attached to the bag now. And
right,
that's why you
right.
couldn't step down. It was crazy and you were trying to step down and so the bag was pulling back and your leg was going down, dude. It was horrible. Ugh,
all, all I really remember about that, I mean, not like it was a traumatic experience and I forgot about it. Like I really didn't think it was that bad. I don't know if there's not many nerve endings there or what, but it didn't hurt too bad. But
right.
like uh, all I remember was you just like, what do you want me to do? And I just going like, I'm not quite sure. I don't know what to do. I'm just kind of like, I'm just in limbo here.
Right.
I don't know where to go with this. I'm just like, maybe like try to lift the bag or something. And I don't know.
And mixed with the visual, I was just completely confused. Like I just didn't know what to do either. It was just like, what is happening? I can't wrap my head around this.
Yeah. And the real problem I should state too is that it was like a mesh on the outside. So the hook
Right.
was poking out through that. So I had it hooked into my leg, but the other side, like the actual head of the jig, was on the inside of the mesh. So it's not like I could just like leave the hook hanging there. Like the whole bag was stuck to my leg.
Yeah. Yep. Because the hook had gone through the mesh, and oh man, it was so crazy. So I don't want to think about that hook pulling your skin away from your body anymore. Let's talk about what to get inside the tackle box. Because I basically started with uh, this is what I remember from my childhood tackle box, right? And that's why I say this is what I started with. It was uh, a set of eagle claw, right? Eagle claw hooks,
Yeah.
just little like crappie hooks, basically. They have the leader line on them, I think is what it's called, and then just a hook at the
Snell.
end. What is it called?
A snell.
Oh, okay.
Yep.
So yeah, it has an extra. It has fishing line already on it, and then you tie that fishing line to your actual line that's
Mhm.
on your setup. Sinkers, bobbers. I swear that was it.
That's all you need. Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, if you're getting started and you want to um, live bait rig a bobber, the sinkers, like the lead sinkers. Um,
Hmm.
I think Gremlin is the main brand that everybody uses. Um, like if you ever seen it, you might not know.
No, I
Um,
have. That's what I had for sure. It's the little, like a little gremlin holding the fish, and
yep,
like usually black, just a black outline logo.
yeah, yep. That's the guy. I don't
Hmm.
know if there's too many other brands making that stuff because that's the only one I think I ever bought.
Right.
But um, yeah, those sinkers, weight doesn't really matter too much because if you need more, then you add more, and
Mm-hmm.
so
Good point.
yeah, they're so the sinkers and then the hooks, like you said, like Eagle Claw still makes awesome stuff, and they make really good
Hmm.
stuff now too. Like you have your entry level regular
Mm.
Eagle Claw, but Wright and McGill is the company that makes all that stuff,
Oh,
and
okay.
I have like really legit Wright and McGill stuff. Like Skeet Reese is Wright and McGill guy. He's got all his like professional bass uh, series stuff, and then Tony Roach is a walleye guy. He's got Wright and McGill.
Mm.
I have a Skeet Reese and a Tony Roach rod, but um, just your regular Eagle Claw hooks are perfectly fine. They're um, the kind of cook. I don't know if I just said cook there. I might have. The kind of
Kind of.
the kind of cook that you need is a sous chef. I don't know. The kind of hook that you need is like a straight shank hook is probably what's popular, but like you were talking about, the snelled ones work really well
Hmm.
because you have some of that clear line already, and it gives you a little bit. I think those are a little bit um, higher test, so it gives you a little bit
Mm.
more abrasion resistance. I don't know for sure.
Oh.
I don't use snell hooks anymore.
Hmm. Right. So it's been a
Um,
little while. I would say, as someone who has been getting more into fishing and tying lines or tying hooks on directly, that people are just handing me, uh, and still having had these Snell lines, right? That's how you said it?
yep, yeah.
These
I
Snell
think
setups.
yep. I think they're called
Yeah,
snelled hooks.
Snelled hooks. Yeah, and so when I'm putting one of those on, and I have, I've done both in a fairly short amount of time here in the past, and they are definitely thicker. I don't know what that does to the fish or for the fish or whatever, but they have to be higher tests. It's never been the same thickness as the line that I'm actually running through the reel or off the rod or however you say that. It's always been a more durable feeling line for sure.
Yeah, I think it might be a little bit thicker. Um, but yeah, it's. I don't know if those come with different tests or anything. When I was a kid, like I
Hmm.
just go and grab a pack of those. Like I need some hooks, and
Hmm.
that's what you grab. That's what I was taught to use
Hmm.
initially. And
Hmm.
oh, excuse me, there's nothing wrong with them. That's what I use,
Sure.
or that's what I used, um,
Hmm.
and they worked. So, but the thing with the snelled line is it has the hook with the line pre-tied on it, and then I don't know. I think they make different lengths, but like 6, 8 inches up, there's a loop.
Hmm.
And to use that loop, the other thing you're going to need to have is a safety pin style barrel swivel. So you have the
Yeah.
barrel swivel.
Hmm.
Um, it it's a swivel. It'll spin around.
It spins. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
that's exactly. It spins around. It has like
yeah,
free movement,
right.
basically.
Yep, and it'll reduce the line twists and everything. So it's a good thing to have. And the safety pin style, it's basically like what it sounds. The safety pin is a piece that you're able to like pop open, and then you hook that loop over, and you can close it. And that's a good thing to have when you're starting. Like if you're not real good at tying knots yet, or you want to try switching between stuff. I think that using not using that, I should say, um,
Hmm.
gives me a little bit better feel and sometimes better action. Like sometimes some people think that they work a little bit better or whatever, but I personally don't like the look of it either. I just think it looks like a bunch of gaudy stuff coming out the front of my lure or whatever. But
Okay,
people
yeah.
definitely catch fish with it still there. Like
Yeah, and
they,
for a beginner, like you said, there's like it's very easy to switch on and off because it's
yes,
basically like a safety pin is seriously the best explanation I think one can give for it. You can switch things on and off it pretty damn fast if you're out there experimenting and again, beginner fishing or just getting into it.
right, yeah. And the only thing that you would have trouble with is, if you're going to switch between live bait fishing with that snelled hook and a lure, then you have to make sure that you have there's, I forget what they're called, but there's weights that are removable. Like they have,
Hmm.
um, there's the ones that are just balls that you pinch
Mm-hmm.
on. And then there's the ones that are like the balls that have like flanges on the back that you can like pinch those to reopen it once it's crimped on.
Yeah. Okay.
So if you
Mm-hmm.
get those, then you can open it back up and take your weights off. And then you'd also have to have like the old school style bobbers where they have like a hook on the top and the bottom. I would suggest going with a slip bobber, um,
Mm-hmm.
learning how to use one of those because those are so much more versatile. Um, and I mean, basically, like in short, a slip bobber gives you the opportunity to be able to make casts regardless of how long or like how deep you're setting your bobber.
Mm-hmm.
Where
Yeah.
if you were to try to fish 7 or 8 feet down with one of those old school bobbers and you have 7 or 8 feet of line hanging off the end of your rod, and you're trying to cast that whole big chunk, and it makes it way more likely that you're going to tangle up something while you're trying to
Right.
cast. So,
Yeah, 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 for sure. So, I mean, for again, we're building the beginner tackle box, right? Our first tackle box. You don't think the old white and red bobber with the where you have to run your line along the side of it? You don't recommend that out of the gate? You say Google slip bobber, go buy it, get good at it.
I say Google slip bobber, learn how to use one of those. But if you want to use that old school, still don't use that red and white bobber. I, I've never liked those. I used to. They would make these ones in a pack where they were made out of like styrofoam, a little bit more dense styrofoam, and they'd be like colored like bright green or bright
Mm.
yellow,
Mm-hmm.
and
Mm-hmm.
they were the same idea as that red one. How they went
With the
on.
clip on the top and the clip on the bottom, and you kind
Yeah,
of run it
yeah,
along the side.
yeah. It was like a plastic piece that went through that styrofoam, and I think those were easier to use. It had like a yellow tab on the top. I think those were easier to hook on, and some of them had a weight on the bottom of the bobber, so it made sure that your bobber stood up properly too.
Mm. Mm-hmm.
So that's the ones that I used before I learned how to use a slip bobber.
Nice.
Yeah, I think
No, that's
the red and white ones, if you need to, they're cheap. They'll work, but a slip
but
bobber just
yeah.
ups your game. Even if you're a beginner, like a slip bobber just makes it so much better. Because, like I said, even from shore, if you want to cast someplace, your your cast placement can make a big difference. If
Mm-hmm.
it, you might be able to, you might be using the exact thing the fish would be biting on that day, or the live bait, whatever you're using. It's exactly
Mm-hmm.
what the fish wants. But if you don't put the bait in front of the fish, he's not going to catch it. He's not going to eat it if he doesn't know
Right.
it's there. You're not going to catch him.
Right. Yeah. So if you can't get down to their level or where the fish are or whatever, yeah, you're just not going to. I think, yeah, we've said that in the past for sure. It's like you got to find the fish. You're not just going to catch fish because you're out there. You still got to find them.
Yeah,
What else goes with the slip bobber? Because I remember buying my first slip bobber set, and you can just go buy a slip bobber. I mean, they're there. It's just a bobber, but there's like a few other things that you have to get to make a slip bobber work. Is that correct to say?
yeah. You have to have a bobber stop, and a bobber stop is just a string. It's like a they come with it's like a spiral knot. It's kind of hard to explain. There's tag ends. There's a line that goes one way and a line that goes the other way. In the middle, there's like this spiral
Mm-hmm.
knot, and there's a
Yeah.
plastic tube. So you just feed the line through that plastic tube, and then you pull that plastic tube out, and you pull those two tag ends tight, and it puts that stop on your line wherever you want it. And that's what stops the bobber from going too far. Like wherever you want the depth, that's where you set it. So that's the most key part. Depending on the bobber you have, you might need to get some beads too. But a lot of times when you buy the bobber stops, they come with beads in the pack because
Okay.
the bobber stop sometimes can be too small and it'll go through the slip bobber because the line just goes right through the slip bobber.
Yeah,
So
right through the center of the
yep,
slip bobber. You just
yep.
feed the line right through.
So the bobber stop is that knot that goes above the slip bobber. So when the line goes through, that knot stops it at the top. But if the bobbers, depending on the bobber that you have, if the bobber hole is too big, that stop will still go through. But if you put a
Mm-hmm.
bead between that stop and the bobber, then that
Mm-hmm.
bead is too big to go through the bobber, and the hole in the bead is small enough that the stop will stop it.
Oh, okay. Yeah. So that can they if you find the right set, the beads will be in with the knots already.
Yeah, most of them come with the stops and the beads.
Yeah. Very good. I feel like we went over hooks just a little too quickly. I want to jump back to that because we talked about the pack of hooks and stuff like that, but you said like, hey, that's fine, that's good. Grab a pack of those if to get your first tackle box started. If you're out there, helping someone get a tackle box going right now, is there another kind of hook that you would say like, hey, toss these in there too?
Yes. So first off, if you're for like the live bait fishing, when you're doing a bobber fishing, there's like a straight shank, like the eagle claws. They have on the point there's a barb to like hold the fish, but on the
Mm-hmm.
straight shank there's a couple of small barbs too to hold the bait. Like if you're using a worm,
Oh. Mm-hmm.
yeah. So that helps a lot when you're trying to fish with worms or whatnot. It's not
Mm-hmm.
important if you're using a minnow, but um, those are very versatile hooks, and
Sure.
that's what I would suggest. There's so many different hooks, but I'm not going to get into that. I'm just going to say like
Right. We
your
could make a
jet.
whole nother episode out of just hooks. I'm sure we
Oh
can.
my
So.
gosh, go if you want to just get an idea of what it's like. Go to like a sporting goods store and walk in the terminal tackle aisle and look at the hooks. It's just a whole giant wall of hooks. But don't let it intimidate you. There's so many that are so specific to what type of fishing you're doing that like you don't need all those hooks, but sometimes you can hone it down to do exactly what you want. So um
Mm-hmm.
the other hook I would say to get is a worm hook, because if you're talking like if you want to go fishing and trying to use some artificial baits and learn how to use other stuff, I would get a worm hook. And a worm hook is made for artificial worms.
Mm.
And it's
Okay.
I mean, there's different sizes, and the way that they're said is aught, like 5-aught, 6-aught, which is basically 5/0 is a
Oh,
5-aught,
yep.
four
Mm-hmm.
slash zero is 4-aught. If you
Yep.
ever hear anybody saying that stuff. But when you're talking about the smaller hooks, like the live bait ones, those are just one singular number because they're small enough. Those are size
Mm-hmm.
fives, size sixes, and the higher the number, the smaller the hook.
Mm.
So
Yep.
like a size 12 is a very small hook. Uh, and
Yep.
that's but the opposite once you get into aughts. It's like a
Oh, weird.
yeah, for the nerdy people of you out there, it's like how Virtua Fighter does their scoring. There's the uh, what was it before when you hit the Dons? What was it?
It was it was a 10th dan and then a ninth dan, and you would work your way up to first dan, right?
No, it was the other way. First Don, second Don,
First.
like
Okay.
before that, there was I forget what it is now, but there was a scoring system before that. You would work
Oh
your way
yeah.
up to
Hmm.
first. I want to say it was like Caillou or something.
Yep.
First
Yeah, I can't
Caillou,
remember the words. That
and then
sounds about right,
and then
but
once you hit first on, then it switched on you, and that's the same thing with the fish hooks. Like it's size 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and then you get to 1/0, 2/0, 3/0, 4/0, 5/0, and then
mhm.
that's when you're getting big.
Mhm.
And 5/0, 6/0, those are big hooks. But and they get bigger than that. I mean, we could ask Tony Young. I'm sure he's dealt with some monsters down in
Oh,
Florida.
right. Out there in yeah, fishing in the ocean? Probably.
Yeah, they might even have numbers bigger than what I know. Like, yeah,
Probably.
we
Like,
don't.
maybe the "ot" turns into a 1 even, and you're just like, "Holy shit."
I just picture
Uh
somebody down on the bayou, just like, what size is that? Is that like a 13 on you? Oh man, that not 13 on that. We just call that a big ass hook down here, man.
Uh, what is the what does that worm hook do? Like, what is it?
Oh,
Why is it
yes.
specifically a worm hook?
Okay, so the worm hook is, you have the curve of where the hook is, but then it's kind of like a straight shank for a while. Like say a 1/0 worm hook is probably like an inch and a half long, maybe like an inch and
Mhm,
3/4. But the way that the hook bends, um, basically, I can't really explain to how to put it in, but once you have the worm in, or once you have the hook in the worm,
mhm,
your line basically is at the front of the worm, and the point of your hook is like that inch and a half back.
mhm,
So they don't, so they can eat the worm and they don't have to completely inhale it for you to be able to hook them. You know what I'm saying? Like
mhm.
there's some of that hook in there, and
Yeah.
it's just made to use a plastic worm. Like if you tried to use one of those other hooks to fish a worm, you could technically do it, you know, just
Mhm,
loop the hook on the front of the worm and fish it like that. But those hooks are made specifically to fish a worm. And if you're trying to get into artificial baits, um, a plastic worm is all time great. Like
mhm.
that's a go to for, if you ask any professional fisherman out there, or any, you know, any angler that knows what they're doing when it comes to bass, they have plastic worms because they catch bass for sure.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah, for sure. Yeah, I've been seeing that too. And before we wrap this up, I have to ask about line because you have to be ready. You've already said it. You got to have your equipment ready, right? You got to
Yeah.
be your rod to reel. We're not going into that, but you have to have them. So you got to be ready. You already got line on the reel. Do you keep line in the tackle box? Let's just say you're
I
a beginner. You got one rod, one reel. You're going out. Is there a set in the box?
Yeah, so I keep line with me because I use stuff for like leader material as well, depending on how
What
I'm
it,
fishing. When
what does leader material mean?
um so like uh oh, there's that's a very loaded question.
Okay, we don't have to get into it here. We could get
No,
into it differently.
no, so we can. I'll say like having line with you is never a bad idea because you might
Mhm,
need it for something. Say like you might have to, you know, you want to use that safety pin swivel
mhm,
and you run out of snelled hooks. Now you have line to make your own snell. You might not know how to
mm,
make your own snell, but if you have your phone with you, you got YouTube, and somebody's going to show
right,
you how to make that snell if you want to learn. Like you
mhm,
can, you can do it right there. But
mhm,
I use it as leader material. Like I have specifically stuff that is used for leader material. It's a little bit more expensive, but leader material is like, um, for instance, when I'm fishing certain things, I fish a lake that has a lot of northern pike. They have teeth. They can bite through your line. The leader
mhm,
material is a little bit more abrasive resistant, a little bit tougher. So I can use something else that goes from, I use a different kind of just a straight up barrel swivel. It doesn't have the safety pin on it. But
Mm-hmm.
I'll go from my regular line to that barrel swivel, and then from the barrel swivel to the leader material. So I have that abrasiveness
Mm-hmm.
for when they bite or whatever. But you
Mm-hmm.
can also go like you can use braided line and then go to fluorocarbon for the last little bit. So
Mm.
that's more so they can't see it because braided line is not invisible, but
Mm-hmm.
fluorocarbon is almost invisible. So I always have extra chunks of line with me. Um, for a beginner, you probably don't really need it. If you're
Yeah.
using a spinning reel, your odds of getting tangled to the point where you can't do anything with it are pretty low. But to
Mm-hmm.
have a little bit more line with you is not a bad idea because if somehow you did screw it up, or you have a rod, and I should say rod, but you have a reel that's a little bit cheaper, and
Mm-hmm.
those don't always work perfect for some reason. Like the line gets up underneath the spool itself and gets tangled
Mm-hmm.
in the gears, and you get
Right.
it all fixed, but it screws up your line. Then you can cut that off and re-spool
And do it again.
and not
Sure.
have to worry about your day or whatever.
Right. You can get back
But
on the water, get something in the water, I guess.
yep. But I would say too, um, rod and reel can play an important part down the line. I know we're talking about just tackle boxes, but I would say to start, get yourself a quality monofilament. I know that there's a lot of lines out there, and it can be that's another daunting task. Like when you go and look, there's so many different there's super
Mm-hmm.
lines and
Mm-hmm.
monofilaments and fluorocarbon and braid. To start, get yourself a quality monofilament because that can do everything. It can
Mm-hmm.
it floats, so you can use a bobber, uh, you know, fluorocarbon sinks. You can use
Mm-hmm.
top water baits with it because it floats. It's relatively clear, so you can catch fish without them seeing it.
Mm.
I suggest to get that. Some people might say to start yourself with a braid, but the knot strength for certain knots is a little bit harder with braid.
Mm.
Braid
Mm-hmm.
is harder to cut with a
Yeah.
scissors.
Okay.
But real quick too, because I didn't really finish it up, I would say other things that you need to have in your tackle box. Doesn't matter what kind. Scissors, a pliers is very handy.
Mm-hmm.
Um, a needle nose would probably get you a long ways because that you can use to crimp your weights. You can use to take the hook out of the fish
Hooks
if
out.
if
Mm-hmm.
you get a fish, especially if you get a toothy critter. You definitely want to have something to get the hook out.
Yeah.
If it's in its mouth a ways, you don't want to be sticking your finger in there because walleye is not too bad, but the pike's teeth are like razor blades. They're
Mm-hmm.
they
Sure.
they wobble and they just slash you. I've never had it happen to me before, but I've seen it happen to people, and that was
Yeah.
enough for me to make sure I had a players.
Yeah, no, that's perfect because that's what I was gonna say. I was gonna say, depending on your age and your ability, like have a knife or a clipper or something. I always use a knife, but you make a really good point about the pliers, and it made me think like, do they still sell those all-in-one tools? We used to call them Leathermans back in the day.
Yeah,
I don't know what they call them anymore. Do they still sell those? And would that be something you'd recommend, or do you need something? Because those are fairly short, right? We're talking even when you fold it out into the pliers, it is. I don't know. It's short. If you were to get a pike to really suck something down, I don't know that that would do the job.
it would work for you. I mean, it depends on the size of the pike. The thing with
Mm-hmm.
I think technically they're called multi tools. Like a Leatherman
There we
is,
go.
I think a
Is a
Leatherman is a
brand, right?
brand. Yeah,
I'm gonna have to beep that out.
yeah, it doesn't matter. Everybody does it
I'm
with
kidding.
everything. Like,
I know. Like,
how many people do you know that call it facial tissue? Everybody calls them Kleenexes.
right, exactly.
So, but I prefer to have. I actually have forceps. They're long, skinny forceps,
Oh,
and instead of pliers, like
you're a fucking surgeon. I get it.
pretty much, yeah. But they have like a Berkeley. I mean, you can get a nice pair that's long, and they have like the rubber coated handles, and then the forceps is nice because when you close the handle, it has like those teeth that'll hold
hmm
it shut when you close it, so you can pinch it on the hook. and then you can kind of like try to move the hook, and if it's not doing what you want to do or whatever, you didn't lose your spot. You just kind of let go of it and try to move your hands.
Mhm.
Some hooks are
Yeah.
easier to get out than others depending on where it goes, or if you have a bigger fish that swallows a, for instance, you have a jerk bait that has three treble hooks on it. So each hook has three hooks on it. So you have,
Mhm.
or three barbs, points, or whatever you want to say. But you have
Mhm.
three hooks that have 3 points. So you have nine, and they all get in the mouth.
Oh
Like
god.
sometimes it takes a little bit. And it's helpful to have that forceps to just be like, all right, well, I got this one out. I got to try to figure out the angle to get this other guy out.
That's crazy. So, yeah, that that sounds like a pretty essential tool. Oh, but, if you got a pliers, you can do it. I wanna say before we wrap this up is I've never had a great experience at a local at a tackle shop, like a big store, a small store. I've never had a great experience where someone is like willing to sort of walk me through this. I hope that local tackle shops are doing that now. I want this to be your guide to go in there a little bit educated if you're listening to this and you want to get a tackle box going. But I if you're gonna do it, you're gonna get help at a local tackle shop. But if you go to Shields or Dick's or something like that, it's usually harder to find people. In my experience, what about have you? Do you always just go to the big shop?
Well,
But you also
yeah,
know what you're doing now. But
yeah. I
so
mean, I go to the big shops, just because I like the selection. Like, don't get me wrong, the mom and pop shops are awesome, and when you're dealing with one in like a fishing town where those people started it because they know what they're doing, that's a different story. Like, I live in the metro,
sure,
and I got people that are just selling this stuff because they are, it's their
it's a
job.
market.
Yeah,
It's a
I would.
market. There's a
Yeah,
market for it, and they're just like sell it.
yeah, I would say like the ones that I met around here, it's more like it's not a passion, it's a profession.
Mm-hmm.
Where when
Mm-hmm.
you go to those big time like fishing cities, like those people started it because this is what they wanted to do. So
Right. Right.
um but when you go to like Shields or whatever, I I talk to the people there, and um they all uh are pretty knowledgeable, and they help me
Mm-hmm.
out. But
Mm-hmm.
also I know what I'm talking about,
Mm-hmm.
like
Mm-hmm.
when I'm asking them questions, it's pretty specific, and I think they're almost excited to talk to me. Like
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I shouldn't say excited. It's not like, oh, this guy. I feel
No,
like
I know what you
it's
mean though.
yeah, I feel like it's more like I say, hey, do you have this, or I ask them a specific question, and they're
Mm-hmm.
just like, oh yes, a knowledgeable question that I get to answer. Like I get to put
Right.
like show this guy that I know what I'm talking about. And it's
Yep.
just I I don't mean that to come off as rude or sound like a jerk to anybody else that doesn't know about fishing, but it's kind of like I feel like when you ask me about the leader material, like when they get
Mm-hmm.
some questions, they're just like, oh my god, there's so much to that answer, like I don't even know where to
Right.
start with you. Uh, but um
Yeah,
yeah,
actually, I hope that this is a good, if you're listening to this and you're just thinking about getting a tackle box started, I hope this is a good way to go in with a little knowledge, right? Don't be afraid to ask those people because they're going to help you. They're going to be able to show you what's out there. They may be able to show you some new stuff or give you some pointers, just like we have. But I hope this helps just get you started. You know what I mean?
yeah, and I want to say too, um I know that we're about to get onto the other topics, so I'm not going to go into any detail because, again, there are YouTube videos that will help you learn how to use this stuff because there's so much to all of this. But if
Mm-hmm.
you want to get a couple of lures, a lipless crankbait,
Mm-hmm.
there are a lot of options out there. Like a rattle trap is an old school one. Um, but there's so many different kinds. Like if you said if you went in and said, I'm looking for a lipless crankbait, something that can catch everything or whatever, I don't know what you would tell them. Say, I'm looking for a lipless crankbait. Which one would you prefer, or which one would you suggest? They're
Mhm.
probably going to say, like, I just got this one in, or whatever. They'll probably tell you what their favorite one is. So
Mm.
they're not going to be scared to help you. Uh,
Mhm.
Fleet Farm. I'm
Mhm.
not trying to talk trash about Fleet Farm, but they seem to like not want to help you. That I think that it's so crazy there, and they're constantly getting questions all the time. They seem to be a little bit
Mhm.
bigger store, and
Mhm.
I don't know if all of them are the same, but they seem to, in my personal opinion, they seem to be less apt to help you out with your questions because they're um like
I think they're more floor workers, like, they're just general floor workers, I think, that,
right,
like, a
yes,
Shields, you can actually go and they will put somebody who works the fishing area in the fishing area, like, that person's sort of specific to it. For me, it's like comparing Walmart or Target or something like that. When you go to the electronics section in a Walmart or Target, you expect to get an electronics employee, but when you're anywhere else in the store, you're just like, "Well, this person probably works everywhere."
right,
Like,
yep,
you know what I mean?
yeah, and I think they try to do that too, like Shields does, but it's not as general. Just like you said,
Right.
it's kind of in between those two worlds where you
Mhm.
have everything. Like I know once upon a time I worked there for a little while and I wanted to work in the fishing and I was put in the automotive section. So
Mm.
it's not like you get what you want to do, I
Mhm.
probably knew
Sure.
more than their people working in the fishing department, but I had to sell car stuff, which was fine. But
Right.
anyways, so a lipless crankbait is
Mhm.
a perfect starting one because that's one you can just cast out and reel in and catch fish. But there's a lot more to it too. So
You can
watch,
grow your skill set with it?
yeah. So you can watch a YouTube video and they'll show you because you can yo-yo it back in. You can you know a
Mhm.
lipless crankbait can even be fished in the wintertime through the ice. Like
Oh, wow.
it's a very versatile lure.
Wow.
But a lipless crankbait, I would say, um, a soft plastic worm with your worm hook. You're gonna have to
Mhm.
buy
Yep.
soft plastic from someplace.
Mhm.
Whatever you want to go. Like a Zoom makes them. A Zoom, I think it's Zoom is the trick worm. Uh,
Mm,
that
okay.
one's old school. Like that one's been around forever. They work. Um, Otherwise, literally anything. There's so many different kind of worms out there, but just a straight tailed worm is a great starting point. And
Mhm.
then a inline spinner, like a
Oh.
Meps, only makes
Mm,
inline
mhm.
spinners, and there's
Yep.
all sorts of different kinds, and there's different sizes and stuff. Those again are you cast them out, you reel them in, and there's little nuances like learning how to pause it and pump it and the retrieve speed and all that stuff. But that's another one where you cast it out and you reel it in, and those work so well on the river. And another thing that works well on the river and it works well for catching walleyes and everything is get yourself some jig heads.
Mhm.
Um, like a eighth ounce is probably good. Like that's pretty versatile where you can cast it out and reel it in, and you can also use it as a jig. But I would say um, just a white curly tail grub. You can
Mm.
buy that's a soft plastic bait as well.
Yeah.
I
Yep.
should explain. I know it sounds kind of weird, but um, like Mister Twister makes them. Yum is one of my favorites. The scent
Yep.
seems to work well.
Mhm.
Otherwise, Power Bait makes those too, but just a white curly tail grub. You can take that out on the river, cast it out, and just reel it straight in, not have to do anything and catch fish. And you could
Mm.
also take it out on, you know, a walleye lake and go fishing 18 feet of
Oh, nice.
water on the weed edge and catch fish with it. Like that's what I would
Sure,
say.
And like the straight-tailed worm you were talking about earlier, you need a worm hook for that. Is there anything for that grub that you need special, or would that fit on one of these more
The,
generic hooks that we were talking about earlier?
the jig head. You got that one you use the
Oh,
jig head
I
with.
gotcha.
Yeah, so
Okay.
the jig head already has the hook built into it, and that one you can
Mm-hmm.
go generic with. Um, Here in Minnesota, I don't know what their range is as far as where they're sold. Northland Tackle is a Minnesota-based company, so
Mm-hmm.
that's kind of one of the cheaper ones here. But just a regular white jig head. Um, some of them have red eyes. Some people like
Mm-hmm.
that. You actually don't even need to have a color. A silver jig head, just a lead jig head, no paint. People,
Mm-hmm. Works, huh? It
some
works.
walleye fishermen swear by those. Like they
Oh
will
yeah.
not use a painted jig head
Wow.
unless they have to. I mean, if they're having a slow day or whatever, they try to
Right.
get
You
some
always blow out the
color.
colors on the slow day.
Yeah, yeah. Try to get some pop. Try something different. But a lot of them love that unpainted jig head.
Just nice.
Yeah. So
Very
you would
nice.
put the just a refresher real quick. If you got a notepad and you're ready, uh,
Get your notepad ready, guys. Here we go.
jig head with the curly tail grub, inline spinner like from Meps is a great company. They make great ones. Panther Martin is another company that makes good ones. Um, Blue Fox. Those are. I mean, if you go and you look at inline spinners, I think those are like the only three companies, but they all make good stuff.
Yeah.
But
Mm-hmm.
and then a
Lipless crank.
lipless crankbait. So whatever one you choose there,
Yeah. Just go to your
almost
shop and
any
ask.
anybody that makes hard baits has a lipless crankbait.
Mm-hmm.
Rapala, it's Strike King. Everybody makes
Mm-hmm.
their own version of a lipless crankbait.
Nice. Very
Yeah,
good. Yeah. Yeah, man. I was wondering if this was going to happen. We were going to hit an hour on this one, just on this topic alone, pretty much, which is good, which is fine. That's what we're here for. We're really here about fishing. That's what the whole channel is built on. I know we said a lot of like, hey, check out YouTube. So hopefully, Real AF TV will get some of these videos out there soon too. We're working on it, guys. I swear, we really are.
yeah.
Uh let's put a wrap on the beginner tackle box here, and we will move on to the second half, the random take, a cost of a hobby.
Oh yeah.
Let's take that break.
Break time.
Oh. You're listening to the Really TV podcast.
All right, Tim, we are back from the break. Everybody else, if you made it this far, you got your hour in. Are you ready for a little while longer? I hope so. And we don't really have a specific format. I know we try to stick to that hour, but hey, whatever. We get on rants, and with fishing, when it happens, it happens. Try to tighten up the second half for everybody listening. I
Yeah,
will
yeah. Yup.
try to tighten it up, but still,
Tighten it up.
we could go over half an hour. Who knows? Anyways,
Yeah.
Real AF TV podcast, fishing and random takes from the land of 10,000 lakes. This is our random take, the cost of a hobby. We have expensive hobbies. Wouldn't you
Yep.
say that's true?
I would say that it's true because, like I said, I didn't want to deter anybody and scare anybody away from fishing because you can fish for cheap. It doesn't have to cost a lot, but
Right.
it
And
can get crazy expensive.
yeah, and I think you did a good job there in the first half of like that beginner tackle box and staying in the beginner realm and and not deterring people. I think you did. I really because I know that you can get crazy into it. So let's just make that transition into this cost of a hobby topic with fishing by starting with the I don't want to say obsession because I think that has like a negative connotation to it, but it really is in a way, right? That obsession of always finding like the next best thing or the newest, they're going and getting the newest thing because you think it's going to do more for you. That's definitely going to come into play when we start talking about the other hobbies too. But like that cost of always sort of just going and getting the next thing and buying the next thing or always wanting to get the next thing is like you just find yourself at the store all the time, I guess. Isn't it? That's the way only way I can put it
Yeah,
is you just find yourself buying shit all the time.
right. I mean, yeah, it's like I'm a pretty avid angler, so there's so many different types of fishing, and this is for any hobby, but like
Mhm.
there's so many different types of fishing, and I want to be able to do it. And like I'm to the point where the way I fish, I want to be able to do exactly what I want to be able to do. Like I want my rod to perform perfectly with this type of bait. I want the
Mhm.
hook to be just so. I want the bait to be just so. I want everything to be just so. And in order to have that kind of perfection, like you're looking at a different rod and reel setup for most things. And that's
Mm,
where, like, depending on the amount of money that you have, it can get crazy expensive, like if
right.
you want it to. I mean,
Mhm.
take for example a professional fisherman. Like a lot of these guys have, I don't remember exactly what you're allowed to have, but they have like 20 rod and reel setups with them.
Mhm. Yeah, I
And
mean, I've been watching the Bassmaster a decent amount lately, FLW, and when you look at their, because they're always at the front of the boat running their trolling motor, and when you look to the right and left of them, uh, there's, I would say, minimum 5 on either side.
yeah,
It's crazy, and I could be wrong because I don't know the exact rules and everything, but that's what it seems like. They'll just they'll be reeling one for a while, they'll drop it, they'll reach down, they'll grab another, and it's that quick. Like they just have these changes on hand, and I can't imagine how much money's wrapped up in just what's sitting on the left and right side of them, let alone the boat, the trolling motor, the anchors or power poles or whatever they're using. Like it gets crazy.
yeah, and I think it's actually more than what you said. I think they have like 8 or 9 on each side of them, maybe 10. It's a
Yeah,
lot. And
it's a lot.
yeah, and each one has its own specific use. And with tournament fishing, all those guys have each one rigged up. So instead of having to like switch between this bait and that bait, it's just bam, switch
Yeah.
to this one. I think this will work. Or I saw a fish, he didn't hit it. I'm gonna go for my reaction bait and see if he hits this and all that
Mhm.
stuff. But as far as hobbies go, like just for an example, like when you're getting into the super high end stuff,
Mhm.
like Daiwa makes great stuff on the entry level. You can go and get a nice reel for, I want to say, like probably their cheapest is around like $15-$20. I have uh a I shouldn't say I have, but my nephew has a Daiwa combination, like rod and reel, that was like
Oh, okay.
35-40 bucks. So it's the rod and reel, and his works fine.
Mhm.
He's a little guy, and he's jigged with it and caught fish and stuff. But a Daiwa Steez,
Okay.
just the reel for a Daiwa Steez is $550.
Now, would you even consider that in the hobby range then? Is
No,
it yeah, I wouldn't
not
either
unless you're
because
loaded. I mean, like, if you're rich and you can afford to just throw money around at a hobby, like it doesn't make that big, it's not a big deal to
right.
you, then yeah, for sure. Like, why not go
Right.
with the best? But because I'm a huge believer of like you get what you pay for. But the Daiwa Steez
Yes.
is like you're talking about like different metals and everything to like make it a little
Mhm.
bit lighter and a little bit more durable, and like it's just that competitive advantage. Like
Mhm.
there's,
Right.
I mean, I'm sure I've never fished with one, but I'm sure like there's a big difference between that one and like the $150 Daiwa reel I have. But mine
Right.
is like so nice compared to, like, especially when you're talking about bait casters. When you're talking about bait casters, like the low end stuff to like $100 reel is a big difference. So, but like a $60
Mhm.
bait caster, I have a Fluger Eklon, which was one of my first bait casters. Well, I should
Okay.
say too, like have some patience if you start with a bait caster. That was, I think, the Eklon was technically my third bait caster, because before I knew anything,
Ooh.
before YouTube was a thing, I tried using the bait casters, like they were like cheaper, lower end ones,
Mm-hmm.
and I didn't know how to dial them in and stuff. And you you get a couple of backlashes or rat's nest, however you want to say it, where the
Mm-hmm.
line
Mm-hmm.
spools up, and your day is over. You and you don't know how to do it, and you're just like, these things are stupid. I'm never using one of these again. And you get a little bit older and a little bit wiser, and you educate yourself on how to learn them. Like even when I got that fluger, I
Mm-hmm.
still never learned from anybody. I just watched like Bassmasters and stuff, and I'm like, they're still
Mm-hmm.
using them. I'm like, there's got to be a reason. I'm gonna
Mm-hmm.
figure this thing out. And then I
Right,
did,
right.
they're awesome once you learn how to use them. But
Yeah, hell yeah. I bet they are.
so
And so, yeah, I mean, to tie it into my hobbies, when you're talking about $500 and stuff like that, I snowboard. I still snowboard. I'm not as crazy as I was at one time younger in my life when it was easier to do. Hey,
right,
kids, don't get old. That's my life advice to
yeah,
you.
just don't get old.
But it's not uncommon to spend $500 on a snowboard. That's just like simple. It is a thing. Now, do you need to do that? No. Have I done that? Maybe.
Maybe, yeah. I don't know. Don't tell my
But the
wife.
point is I mean, yeah, I have. I have. They, usually last a few years. You're not trying to buy that many setups. I have two setups. There's you can go anywhere from you can buy cheap boards, but like same thing as you. You got like your $150 board, and that's sort of what you would call a cheap board. Things may have changed because I haven't been like really into the game buying new gear. In the last 5 years or whatever. But you got your $500, mountain board, and you got your $150 one that you beat up on here in the ice of Minnesota.
Right.
And but then you got to put bindings on that, right? There goes another
Yeah.
150 to 300 and some dollars, whatever you want. And it is definitely something. So here's kids where it's a good thing to get old is you definitely get what you pay for. And no matter how much we're going to, we're not here to disappoint people and get into our own finances of like how expensive hobbies can be. This is just a general speaking of it, but it's 100% something you learn is you get what you pay for. There's a reason why this stuff ends up costing more money.
Right.
There's a certain point with me in electronics, being a hobby as well as my profession, but you get to a certain point where there is just this ridiculous amount of money that you can spend and it doesn't necessarily improve the product that you can only learn with experimentation and just being passionate about your hobby. It's like, why do you have to buy the chrome plated Lamborghini when
Right.
the Porsche does just fine? Like, you can keep up, you know?
Right. Yeah, that's a good way of putting it. Like you you buy quality and it's going to get you through. It's going to work really well. Like you're still going to have a blast doing it. But
Hmm.
I mean, if you really want to and you have the funds to do it, that Lambo's pretty fucking sweet.
Exactly, exactly. And the good thing, and the other thing is like, uh, I, I'm going to go with the $150 range just because you have a perfectly good reel at $150, and it's probably going to last you a long time.
Oh, it's
I
a nice reel. $150 is no
Yeah,
slouch.
no, no. I'm sorry, I did not mean to make it sound like
Oh
that.
no, and I'm not trying to just be like, hey, don't talk shit about my stuff. I'm trying to tell people like don't
Okay,
expect
right.
to have to spend $500. Like $150 is a very nice reel. And a lot of the
Hmm.
pros are
Right.
probably not fishing with the Daiwa Stees. Like those
Right, right, right.
the people fishing with the Daiwa Stees either are loaded or they're sponsored by Daiwa, because who the hell is having 20 rod and reel setups on your boat and each rod is $500? I mean, that's
Right, right.
$10,000 in reels. Just the reels. If you
Oh
had
my god,
if you
that's
had
such a good
20,
point.
yeah, and then you have to buy the rods too. The Daiwa
Mm-hmm.
Steez rods are the same price.
Right.
So that's literally $1,000 a rod and reel setup, and then you have to
Yeah.
put line on those as well, and then you
Mm-hmm.
also have to fish with a lure, and each one of those can be like $10 to $20 depending on the brand you're going with, or they can be
Right.
$7 or $8, and the line as well. Like if you're using like
Uh,
a quality monofilament, that's why I said beginners start with a mono because it's cheap too.
mm-hmm.
Like you can
Mm-hmm.
get a decent monofilament, like 300 yards of it for like $6-7, maybe $8 somewhere in there. I'm not 100% sure on the price of like a 300 yard. Maybe that's the price of like 150 yards, but
Mm-hmm.
150 yards is all you need for
Yeah.
one
Yeah.
rod
Yeah.
anyways.
Sure. Mm-hmm.
But like when you're talking like the high end um stuff, like you can be looking at like 35-40 dollars for 150 yards, or maybe that's 300 yards too. But what the spool, I might be getting the sizes wrong, but what a good monofilament could be for the same size could
Mm-hmm.
be 4 times more if you're looking at like a high quality fluorocarbon.
Right. Yeah.
So I was that it can get out of control if you
That
don't.
no, that's it. That's perfect. That's exactly. I mean, the reason why I say this perfect is because the reason why I can connect with what you're saying so much is because from the snowboarding perspective is there's so much that goes into it. Like you can find, and this again back to what I was saying at the $150 range thing is you can find a pair of bindings for $150, but you get what you pay for. Those probably are going to last you a year. You're going to, end up losing parts off them and then having to replace that. And whether it be a strap or a back, doesn't matter. Yeah, the backing on it. I can't. The high back. There we go.
Right.
um, and that is the repairs cost you money too. And when you get into snowboarding, then you got to start thinking about pants and coat and gloves. And it's just like you're saying with the rods and reels is you you can put a different kind of line on it. It makes it more expensive. You put this reel on that rod, and it's this accessorizing almost, even though you need these things to do the hobbies. It's so many times I've seen people say, like, I'm going to get into this because they rented a snowboard one time and they went out and, they like rode with me. They spent the $30 to get on the hill, which $30 a day just to get on the hill and ride your snowboard at
Right.
least,
Right.
you know, and and then they're like, yeah, I can get into this, and then you start going like, okay, but if you're going to do that, you're going to need this and this, and you're going to need goggles, which we don't need half the time here, but trust me, you want to have them, and
Yeah, there's certain days
it just
where you
piles on
kind of
top. You
need it.
got to think about it, right? Like you have
Hmm.
to, even with fishing, polarized lenses, like you really, that would be
Oh yeah,
something I would
for
tell
sure.
somebody right away who get it. Hey, you're going fishing. Okay, one of the things you need to be an angler, polarized lenses.
Yeah, and you can get those for cheap too. They don't need to be expensive, but the
Yeah,
difference
because
in the
polarized
lens,
just works.
right? The difference in the lenses though is just the quality of the lens. Like you can get those cheap ones,
Right,
and if you're
right.
super careful, you can get them to last for a while, but they scratch way easier than the nice ones.
Yeah,
And
and they're
the
not as clear either. When it comes to, like, they do the job of being polarized. Polarized just stops the the angle of the light, right? The bouncing, the reflecting of the light
right.
off of the water. You can cut back on that with polarized lenses, but the cheap ones will do that. Of course they will. It's sort of like that's just science, but
Hmm.
the quality of the lens to actually see through it, it'll change your perspective when you go from a cheap one to an expensive one. You can just see the clarity. You can't really explain it as well as it just happens when you put
Yeah,
on the new lenses. You go like,
when
whoa.
you see him in person too, and like even so, I have some Oakleys, and the they're I forget if they're I don't want to say they're called like Prism or whatever, but they're
Hmm.
designed to pick up on certain colors to help you see certain colors. Like the ones that I have
Mm.
are deep water that are specifically made to help you see into deeper water, because the lakes
Oh,
that I
nice.
fish mainly are deeper, clearer waters. Those are the ones I'm on the most, so that's what I get. But they have like shallow water ones that help you see in like murkier rivers and stuff too.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So it's just stuff like that where, like, if you really want to hone in on specifics, again, just like everything else, if you want to hone in on specifics, they can help you. But I would say the big
Mm-hmm.
difference, that's where you get into the money, is a hobby. When you want to make a hobby more like competitive, if you want to be competitive in anything, that's where you start spending the money. With
Mm-hmm.
literally anything, if you think about it, with any hobby that
100%.
you're at, if you want to be better, more money can help you do that. I know it sounds,
Yeah.
I know it
No.
sounds crazy, but like literally,
You,
like more quality stuff, it just helps.
yeah, and we already touched on that about how like when you spend more money, you get a better quality product, and it can make you better at what you're doing, but you can't be good at what you're wanting to get good at unless you're practicing and doing it. It's not like money can buy your way to the top by any
Right?
means. That's
Yeah.
not what you're trying to imply here.
Nope. Like, just like I said, like with the bait caster, you may have not ever fished and you want to pick up fishing and you're just like, that Daiwa Steez is dope, I'm spending $550 on it. You go out and you cast not knowing how to do it, you still get a rat's nest just like the cheap one, and then you go, this thing sucks shit, and then you stop fishing because you didn't know how to use one. But trust me, that rod or reel is dope, and you
Right,
just didn't
right.
know how to use it.
Yeah, definitely don't be that guy because everybody's seen them. They're really bad in the metro area. In well, they were really bad in the metro area with snowboarding, where you had these people that did that. They just went out and they bought the best of everything. Right? They went into their local shop. They got or they went into a shop, I should say, probably not a local shop, and they got taken advantage of, essentially, in my opinion. And they have the best stuff and the best gear, and you look at that person and you're just like, they don't even know how to use that thing.
Right.
Don't do that. That's not that's part of the cost of a hobby is learning the hobby and then getting the good stuff, and find or learning from somebody and getting that middle ground and going to that middle ground right away. But that learning and that research and stuff like that, that's part of the cost of the hobby. I mean, how much time have you spent just researching your hobby or getting better at it by being out on the boat?
Dude,
You know?
so much. Yeah,
Yeah.
and my favorite saying of all time with fishing is fishing is all about luck, but the more knowledge you have, the luckier you'll be.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just, you got to get educated on how to use your equipment, how to use the rod, the reel, the jig and stuff. Like, if you're trying to
Mm-hmm.
learn how to use something, go find some clear water. Toss whatever you're trying to fish in the water and like play with it. Watch how it
Mm-hmm.
moves.
Right.
That, I mean, you might not know how to work it, but if you watch what it does when you do stuff with your rod, it's a perfect way. A lot of the pros have like a, if they have a pool in their backyard, they'll use it. A lot of them have like a big plastic setup where they just literally have water that they can go run the baits in and see how they work and stuff, and tune them all to, because not all the baits work perfect out of the box, so they'll tune them, because
Wow.
you can turn the eyelid a little bit. Like, some of them will want to pull right or pull left or whatever. You can make them so they run straight every time. And
Damn.
yeah, so
That's crazy.
yeah, so the pros like will hone in on all that stuff. But that's, you know,
Yeah.
just like everything, practice makes perfect.
Mm-hmm.
There's another saying too that was something about like, practice doesn't make perfect, practicing perfection makes perfect. And that's what those pros are doing. Like, they're making everything perfect and then practicing it once they honed it in and tuned it to be perfect. And
Yeah, no, that's exactly it, because hobbies. Okay, the way I look at a hobby is a hobby is supposed to be fun. Like that's why it's a hobby. It's the thing you do when you're not working, right? I mean,
Right.
that's kind of a most basic simple way to break it down. But when you're passionate like we are obviously about what we're talking about, we're passionate about our hobbies. We put in time, we put in effort. Um, it's not just throwaway time to us. We're working at getting better at it. We want to know more. But does that ever cause it to feel like a burden to you?
No, because it's fun to me. I like
Mm-hmm.
learning stuff. I like getting better at things. You know,
Mm-hmm.
if I didn't like it, wouldn't be doing it. Like if it felt like a burden, then I probably would just stop. You know, if it
Yeah.
was
Yeah.
something where I'm just like, oh God, I gotta go learn how to use this new jig, then I'd just be like, maybe I'm not into fishing anymore. Like, but it's
Sure.
just
Sure.
it's like I get excited to see new stuff, and I'm like, oh damn, I wonder how that thing works. I can't wait to
Mm-hmm.
go and learn some new trick or whatever.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
even
And
there's something wired in me too, where it's like there's a competitive nature to me, even if I'm not competing. Like I'm like,
mm-hmm.
oh, here's the new thing. I'm gonna go catch more fish than the next guy, and they're never gonna know that I caught it. It's just something about like
Yep.
I'm just happy like I caught
It's
17
like
fish today, and I bet he didn't. So
Yeah, it's
that
like racing the ghost on a racing game, right? Where there's just that ghost driver going around that you set that ghost. You did that 3 days ago, and then you came back and you still raced that ghost. It's like your self competitiveness almost, or like you race the ghost because back in the day it would be saved on like the cartridge, right? And you would go and that person who set the ghost on the first go around that at the video game store, when you spend all night going around that track trying to beat that person's ghost, they're never going to go rent it again and know that you were the one who set the new ghost, but
right,
you still go race that ghost. It's the like mental exercise of just setting a goal and going for it.
right. And we should also say that kids, uh, back in the day, you could go to a place where they had rentals and you could get a video game or a movie and somebody else like especially like an old like Super Nintendo game or something like that where the
Yep.
save files were built in. You
Mm-hmm.
could go there and they would save it and then you would play the same game that they played because everything's built into that cartridge.
Built into the card. Yep.
It's not
Yeah,
like
so that was a thing. There were these things called rental stores, and other people had played them before you.
yeah, and now you can rent like video games from a red box for a little while, but no, like that's going to be completely your own thing.
It's used, but there's no memory on it. That's
Right,
just
there's
it's
right.
just a read only. There's no save back to.
Exactly. So,
And that's what the
just
internet's for, but the internet tracks everything, so you literally are competing against other people that will see that because they will turn on and see that somebody beat. And so yeah, this like anonymity of racing someone who will never or beating somebody's score that will never see it again. That's gone now. Whew.
right.
Anyways, yeah, we don't want to get off too topic. Actually, I'll go. That'll bring me to video games actually, because that's something I feel I'm crazy passionate about. But I'll be honest, sometimes it feels like a burden because if you follow video games at all, it can be absolutely a rabbit hole of insanity because of the way that the internet reacts to everything now, which is like
Yeah.
instant reaction. They don't ever let like the thing happen. It's just like first thing to come to my mind, quick react. Um, and that has, I wouldn't say it's turned me off to video games because I still play the hell out of video games, but that deep dive, um, like passion that we're talking about, where you want to keep learning and getting better at it. I kind of lost that for the games themselves, but I still do it about the technology and the like what's actually making the machines run and things like that because technology is still a passion of mine and that is a very expensive hobby. There's times when I'm just sitting around and it costs me family time because I see something earlier in the day and then I'm like, oh yeah, that's right. I wanted to read about that new hard drive and stuff like that. And that's the like time costs also that I'm
Right.
talking about is like, ooh, I actually will let it interrupt my like family time because it's right there on my phone now. I just look down and go, oh sweet.
Right. Yep. Totally get it. Like that's what it's like for fishing too. Like,
Mm-hmm.
I mean, there's all these like new rigs and stuff coming out all the time too. It's not just, it might seem pretty straightforward, like, oh, how much different can a jerkbait be? Well, I mean, we don't need to get into it. They definitely have a lot of differences. That's why some of them are worth $20 and the other ones are
Mm-hmm.
worth a lot less. But
Right.
like there's new types of rigs and stuff where they're just like, oh, this one's the Nico rig or this one's the
Mm-hmm.
tiny child rig, and you're just like, what is this?
What is that?
I gotta learn about how this works and stuff and
Mm-hmm.
all this other stuff. But yeah, just like we were saying before with the competitive nature, like video games, I love video games too. If you just want to pass some time and play a video game, I mean, it's not like smartphones are cheap, but you already have one probably. If you don't,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I'm not sure how you're listening to this podcast, but good for you. You found it, even though you don't have a smartphone. You probably have some sort of a computer that I would assume, which is also a way you can play games. But
Mm-hmm.
however you're listening to this podcast, you can probably play games on that. And
Yep.
it doesn't need to be super nice. Like if you're just looking to pass time, you can play a game on your smartphone that is
Mm-hmm.
free that you just download, and it doesn't
Right.
need to be great. But if you want to be great at it, it's not like you're gonna whip out your smartphone and some like professional gamer is gonna be talk shit and you're just gonna be like, bro, what? How Candy Crush you, bro?
Oh, Candy Crush you, bro.
Step up, son. You want to test my skills? But
Right.
like those guys are talking. I mean, you know better than me, but like you're the
Mm-hmm.
computer, the tower itself, just like how I was talking about, like the reel itself, the tower
Right.
itself,
Mm-hmm.
thousands of dollars. And
Yeah.
then you're talking about you got to get a nice monitor, and then you got to add a
Mm-hmm.
nice keyboard. And
Mm-hmm.
if you're a
Mm-hmm.
computer gamer, if you're talking PC, then you got to get a nice mouse, and then
Mm-hmm.
you got to pay for a good internet
Good
connection.
internet connection.
And
Right. Yep.
there's a lot of stuff that comes into it if you really want to be competitive. So
Right. And yeah, and that's those those are the costs of the hobby, right? It's like it's not always the financial cost of the hobby, I guess. It's the like layers to the hobby and
right,
balancing those
yeah,
costs. I think
and
that's like the biggest thing that I wanted to sort of like get out there and talk about on this is like you can really because even if with fishing, right, when you get into it you can go like, well, I need a truck to pull this boat because this boat weighs that much and now the
right,
vehicle I have is not going to do it. And again with the gaming thing, you were just or it's like the same rabbit hole you get down with the professional gaming situation you were just talking about, is it can get crazy out of control. And part of the cost of a hobby is the time that you take to focus on like budgeting in a way, because you have to rein it in. You have to just, like keep a close. It depends on your financial situation, but I mean, you don't want to just blow it out of proportion and end up with the chrome Lamborghini that sits in the garage when that's not what you actually needed to have fun, because a hobby is supposed to be fun.
right, yeah, you gotta, I mean, when it's a hobby, start small. And if you can, go with somebody else that knows how to do it with anything.
Mm-hmm.
If you want to play video games or whatever, go to an arcade, go to a friend's house and play
I
with
think
them.
those are
Like,
dead now too.
there's still some
Not
around, but
because of
yeah,
COVID, but just
yeah,
because in general.
there's still some around, but they're getting less and less. But I know,
But you're not. But you're right. Go talk to somebody who's already doing it. Go to
yeah,
that person who's already got the mid-level stuff, and
right,
and watch them and play on their stuff
yeah,
and get your feet dirty.
yeah. I mean,
Is
like if
that
you're
get your
listening to
feet
this
dirty? Is that
podcast,
right?
get them wet
There we
and
go.
dirty. Get them dirty wet.
Oh, wet and dirty. I like
Oh,
it.
real filthy, nasty. What do they say? Now I'm thinking of like what Redman says at the beginning of that Christina Aguilera song.
Oh yeah.
That
It's the song is called Dirty.
dirty, yeah, and he's just like real nasty, filthy.
Yeah.
that's
Oh, I
that's what I was
know.
trying to quote there. I'm just
But I forget that I don't know. I can't remember it.
too dirty to clean my act up.
Oh, so good. I just
Redman,
stumbled upon some new Method Man stuff the
did
other
you?
day. It's like within like 3 months or something like that. Oh, it's so sick.
Nice.
God, he's so dope.
Oh, I
Uh,
haven't heard any of the new stuff. I listen to when I'm doing my day job. I was gonna say 9 to 5, but it's more like 7 to 7. But
right, right.
but uh I listen to Method Man on Pandora. I don't know if it's
Yeah,
giving me any new stuff, but it's
yeah.
giving me
It's
some
not
old
actually
stuff that I
his.
didn't know.
It's like his song. He's like the main feature in this new guy who I don't know how long this guy's actually been rapping. I say new guy, but he's new on my radar. I can't remember
Okay.
that dude's name, but the song is Lemon Squeeze.
Oh yeah. Okay.
Yeah,
Yeah,
but
that sounds
okay.
familiar, but I don't know if I heard that one. But he's all over the place, man, acting and stuff, and
Oh, I
he's
know.
on The Last OG. You ever watch that?
Oh no,
Oh, dude, check it out.
I
Tracy
gotta
Morgan.
check that out.
Yeah, Tracy
Oh
Morgan's
yes, yes,
show
yes,
with
yes.
Tiffany
I've heard of it.
Haddish, and he's on there. I like that show. It's a good show.
Yeah, I gotta catch that one.
Yep.
So, oh, anyways, let's
Oh, I
talking
was
about
gonna.
show. Oh,
Yeah,
go ahead.
I was just gonna say. I was trying to go back to. I was thinking about what we were talking about before I started saying dirty. If you what, like anybody that's listening to this, like if you live in the Minnesota area, hit me up. I don't care. I'll show you how to fish. Like
Yeah,
you wanna go fishing? Like you never did it before? Hit me up. We can
yeah,
go. I'll try to meet you someplace. I don't care. I don't have a boat right now, but we can go fish on the bank of the river. I'll show you how
yeah.
to I'll teach you how to fish. And
Hell yeah,
then you can see like if you like it or not, you know? But
yeah.
start with a spinning reel or a spin caster. Even a spinning reel is like
hmm
opening the bail and stuff. It's not hard, but it's not pushing a button like the spin cast is. Where the
Yeah.
spin cast is like the Snoopy pull reel where you just push that button on the back and then when we want to cast you just release it. That's easy, but those reels are not very good for doing
They
much.
just don't hold up that well, I think.
No, you
And
when
hey,
you
same thing for me on hit up Real AFTV REEL AFTV on any of the social medias you want to know about like some game and stuff. I'm or technology, dude. I'm totally down for that too. Just like giving that little bit of feedback of like, hey, I'm thinking about building a PC. I'll be like, yeah, probably just buy a box right now and see if you really actually want to open that thing up and dig in and like for sure, man. We're community outreach type of folk.
yeah, why not? We'll we'll help you out. You got fishing questions? What should I do here? What should I do here? I'll answer the question to the best of my abilities. I'm not saying like I'm a professional or
Yeah.
I know
But
everything, but I've
but
been
that
doing
that
this research for a long time and I know a decent amount. So
right, right.
the same with you
Uh,
with the tech stuff.
uh-huh. Yeah, exactly. Again, back to the topic of cost of this is not it cost doesn't necessarily mean straight cash, homie. It means uh like there's time cost. There's the human cost of like I said that sometimes interrupts my family time because I'm so into it that I'll just get distracted and start reading it and then all of a sudden I'll look up. And the cost, some of this cost of time and experimenting and stuff like that can be absorbed like you said earlier do it with somebody who's already sort of in it. Like find somebody who can kind of guide you to get going if you're interested in this sort of thing, because that will
Right.
save you a lot of time cost, because they
Yeah.
can sort of set you on the right path, and then you can pursue it in your own way to make it fun, so it does become your hobby and not a task or a
Right.
job, almost that burden that I talked about earlier.
Yeah. Or buy it used. Most
Mm-hmm.
most fishermen out there that are selling their stuff, like if it's a decent setup, they don't abuse it, and they're not selling it because it's garbage. They're selling it because they either bought something else, or a lot of guys, you know, just like we're talking about with the hobbies, like figure out if you like it first. They'll buy something decent, go fishing for a while, have a kid or whatever, and then they're just like,
Mm-hmm.
I just kind of realize I'm not that into it,
Mm-hmm.
so I'm selling this or whatever. That happens a
Right.
lot, especially
Sure.
now. Wait
Mm-hmm.
until COVID clears up. There are so many people that went and bought outdoor things that are going to
Mm-hmm.
be selling them in a little while. Like,
Oh yeah.
for example, I bought a small, like, plastic um used boat, and I bought that because I tried to order a new one the day it went on sale, and 3 months later they canceled my order because they just couldn't get them in stock. And it
And it
was,
wasn't simply just a manufacturing, like the factory had shut down because of COVID, or it
yeah,
wasn't that. It was there was just so much more demand now all of a sudden
and
that
all
it
the
just affected the supply.
yeah, and they were getting some in, but like this was from Cabela's, and like they were getting some in, and then they'd go to a different store than the one I ordered it from, and then they'd be all gone. And they were trying to fulfill orders, and they had some sort of a rule that like 3 months down the road, like they cancel your order if they can't fulfill it or whatever. But it was like that
Mhm.
with kayaks and everything. Like everybody was
Mhm.
buying all the outdoor stuff and all the fishing lures and stuff, and I guarantee it. Um, Give it a little while. If I shouldn't say I
Yep.
guarantee it. When things go back to normal, they should go back to normal, but eventually down the road, when things start to get back to normal a little bit more and everything's
Mhm.
opened up to full capacity, these people that are going to be able to go back to doing their everyday thing, like I'm going to go hang out on the bars and whatever, and
Mhm.
they can hang out
Mhm.
with people and crowds and stuff again.
Yep.
They're not gonna do their outdoor stuff, and there's gonna be
Mm-mm.
so much stuff on Craigslist. I can't wait.
I can't wait, he says.
Like, it's so
But
much
it's
stuff.
true.
I'm a discount shopper. That's one thing that I do too. Like,
Mhm.
I love fishing, and I know the importance of a good quality thing, but I do not like paying full price for anything. So I wait for stuff to go on sale.
Yeah, yeah, that definitely, especially again, like with the hobbies, you don't have to pay full price for stuff. It's out there because people are doing this and then just moving on to the next thing. But even though they're moving on to the next thing, it doesn't mean that it's not a good fit for you. Just like you said, like these, I guarantee, I'm right on board with you. As a lot of those people are that went out, and if you go back to our older through the archives here, you'll hear uh, how fishing this year has been higher than ever. When we go to a little more detail, and yeah, it's definitely going to be something that people are going to dump. They're going to be getting rid of. Video game sales have gone into an all-time high. Now, most of these games are digital and stuff like that, so you can't do that. But so you can't get those back. But I can tell you right now that there are more Switches out in the world like this year than there ever have been, which makes sense. But what I'm trying to say is the
The
supply chain
Nintendo
got
Switch.
the Nintendo Switch. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's what I meant. Sorry. Yeah, for
Yeah.
video games. Right. So they basically sold out again. It had been out for 2 years already, and a Nintendo had a perfectly fine steady trickle of consoles going. They had a balance in the market, and then COVID, and wham, it slammed down
Mhm.
and they disappeared again. And those people who bought those are going to buy physical games. They went to Target and they bought it because it was just like, oh, we're getting locked down for 2 weeks. We better run to Target, get all the groceries, and a Switch because we're going to be stuck at home. And yeah,
Right.
you're going to see that used market get flooded now because they are going to start to try to sell that stuff off. And it's just like, it's going to happen all over in those two hobbies. It's just going to happen. That's all there is to it.
Right. Yeah, and those are probably the two biggest ones. Like I know some of the
Right, and we just
PC
so happen to
gaming and
be
stuff.
passionate about them. Like those are like the two biggest growth areas, and we just so happen to be
Right.
passionate about them before all this crap happened. And that's not to toot our own horns and be like, oh yeah, well I was doing that before COVID.
Yeah, I was driving a Lincoln before it was cool to drive a Lincoln.
Exactly. Oh, so yeah, I want to talk budgets here before we get into a 2-hour podcast. Is do because like you said with the phones, I'll use my example, and then you can turn into fishing or whatever. And I just want people listening to ask themselves this too about their hobby, and I'd love to hear some feedback on it. Do you ever budget for it financially and time wise? Do you ever think about the fact that, well, I just bought this phone, $500 phone. I'm probably going to need a new one in 2, maybe 3 years. The video game consoles come out every 5 to 7. They're $500, and that is the financial part of it that, you can think ahead on with technology. There's this sort of like, well, I'm going to do that again in this many years. Let me think about that financial cost. But then there's the investigation of it, I guess. What am I trying to say? The re-educating yourself, the always keeping up with everything. There's that part of it that costs you time. Do you ever budget that time off where you're just like, don't bother me, I'm going to go down a rabbit hole?
Sometimes, yeah. Like with the time, depending on what I got going on. But
Right.
it'll be more like budgeting time, like when I can get out, because I know that when I go fishing it's gonna be a while. So it's like trying to figure out like, okay, what day can I get out, and trying to plan that out with the wife and everything. So yeah, the time definitely. As far as
Right.
the money goes, nah. I just buy stuff when I need stuff, and if I don't have
Right.
money to buy what I need right away, I just make it work with whatever I have. And that's one thing that's nice about fishing, where like, yeah, the nice new stuff that's coming out might have something a little bit cooler, a little bit newer, that'll make it easier, or be able to do something else slightly different that I can't do now. But the old stuff's gonna work just perfect. I have a lose reel from the 70s that I can go out and fish, and I can catch bass just like with my brand new stuff. I mean, it's not going to change anything. It's just
right.
a little bit heavier, and the gear ratio or whatever, it might not reel quite as good anymore, but it's I'm still going to be able to catch fish on it.
But it
It's
could.
not
Yeah.
it's not like the technology, like, I mean, like the old gaming systems, you can still play the games and you can have fun on it, but
Oh yeah, for
like
sure.
PC gaming, good luck trying to do something on like Windows 97. Like
Right.
you got something that old school, like you're not going to be playing anything but the games from back then. And I still think like if you try to turn it on, like, I don't even
It
know
may
what
just
happens though.
set itself on fire. It
Right.
just might spontaneously combust. It could happen.
I feel like it just sound like a car almost. Like your computer is definitely going to be louder than an electric car.
100%.
The
It will
car
be.
is now just like, don't make any noise, and you turn on your computer, it's just gonna be like you can't even enjoy the video game. You're just like, God,
Right.
it is not worth it at all.
Who just turned on the bathroom exhaust fan? Oh, that's the computer?
Right.
Oh, okay.
That's my computer. What's wrong with it? Nothing.
Nothing. That's just what they used to sound like. Oh yeah, for sure. That's actually something with technology too that makes it easier. Is you can just like you can get on that perpetual like phone payment, right? Is you can just say like it's always every 2 years I can go in and I can get a new phone and it's just always part of my phone bill. So you just like budget for that like financially. It's one of those things where if you're out there listening and you're thinking about like getting into a more financially consuming uh, hobby is do research first because you can end up spending more than you want at the beginning than you thought you were going to get into, right? Is like you
Yeah,
can get down these rabbit holes, so do your research ahead of time and kind of plan it out and use use that for your like financial budget because otherwise you're going to end up just like either get like I said earlier with the snowboarding stuff where you're going to get taken advantage of by someone who's just trying to either make commission or is such an avid hobby such an avid person in that they're going to oversell you on what you need. So you got to just get in it right away and again budget the time to sort of get decent at it before you even go and start spending all that cash.
yeah. I mean, like, go if you're talking about snowboarding or whatever, go rent one.
There
Go
you go. Yeah,
and
perfect.
rent one, and
Mm-hmm.
also just like uh using a bait caster for the first time, know that your first time snowboarding is most likely gonna suck shit. You fall a
Yes.
lot. It's a lot.
Uh-huh.
It's a lot to learn the edges and stuff, but um everybody I've ever known, like, do you remember your first time snowboarding?
Oh, dude, yeah. My ass was wrecked. Take that sound bite out.
Yeah, my ass was wrecked. I remember the first day, or not the first day, but the day after the first time I went snowboarding, because
Mm-hmm.
of how many times I went down, and it wasn't like I wiped out bad. It was just like muscles that you don't use before,
Right.
and I've never like went from on my back to like standing so many times that I
Mm-hmm.
used my neck muscles so much that the next morning I tried to lift my head off the pillow and I couldn't. I had to roll over and do a push up.
Oh man.
I just like, I mean, I probably, if I would have taken some time, probably got my head up, but like there never has been a strain to lift your head off the pillow in the morning. Who
Right, right, right.
never, and that's probably the thing too. Like, I mean, unless you're like a wrestler and you're doing like these exercises to make your neck strong,
Yeah.
like you just who lifts their head off the
Who
ground 100
right.
times in a day?
And you could do it and you can push yourself further too because of the adrenaline that's in your system of like learning a new thing, especially a physical thing like snowboarding and stuff like that.
Right.
There's a big time influence during the activity where adrenaline is fueling a lot of what you're doing and that's how you push your neck to its absolute you couldn't push your neck any further to its physical capabilities.
Right. No, and I think probably being out in the cold the whole time probably has something to do with it too.
Yeah,
Like
for
it's kind of
sure.
numbing everything. You don't really feel. I mean, that's the same with a lot of muscles, though. I know I've done leg
Hmm.
workouts before where your legs are sore when you're doing
Hmm.
them, but the next day you're like, "Oh my god,
Right.
my fucking ass!" Every time you stand up, you're just making noises like an old man. But
Right.
yeah, but don't let that deter you. You're gonna be sore the first time, but
Hmm.
after you learn it, like it's gratifying and it's fun to
It
do. I snowboard
truly
too,
is.
or
Yeah. Hmm.
snowboarded. I haven't been out for a while, but um,
Doesn't mean that you couldn't pick it up again because you could. I
oh,
mean,
I for sure
we
could.
could make
I'm
time
not.
and we could
Yeah,
get out again for sure.
I'm not nervous about it. I just like with now I'm more like scared
Mm-hmm.
with my profession, like I really can't have any injuries. I need
Mm-hmm.
everything working. I can't
Right.
have an arm go down. I can't have a leg. Nothing.
Yeah. Right. Your body is your income.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. For sure. No, that makes sense. And that actually is like that's part of the the time cost of this. Like the budgeting of time for me on part of this is that I stare at a screen all day for my job, and then I want to go play video games, right? Which is just another screen. And so I actually have to like I have to time budget in a way so that way I just don't have fucking cross-eyed shaky vision come, the 12 hours, 13, 14 hours of awake where I've just been staring at a screen. I've just been letting light from a box go into my eyeballs. It's like you got to get up, you got to look away, and that's time. That's part of the things you have to think about when you're when you care this much about something and you just want to do it, but you
Right.
have to like be logical about it.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, because
So,
like you said, just staring at the screen all day can have some adverse effects.
mhm,
Where like mine actually, uh, my being outside all day has actually helped because
mhm,
like I can be in the sun all day and it just makes me used to being in the sun. I don't have to
mhm.
worry about sunscreen nearly as much as I used to.
Oh, that's awesome. All right, man. Well, I mean, we've been on this for almost 2 hours. Let's not get too crazy and make our audience think that we're going to be able to do this all the time. I mean, we do have this general goal of keeping it at an hour, but hey, whatever. We like to talk. I
Yeah,
hope everybody can hang in there with us and actually
right,
make it through because
right.
I want to hear other hobbies. We obviously can only talk about what we know. I want to know of other expensive hobbies. Obviously, travel. People used to travel. That was a thing. You'd get in a tin can and you'd go somewhere else in the world. Um, that was a thing. This is 2020. We don't do that anymore. But like that's an expensive one. I know that we didn't touch on at all. There's more stuff out there for sure that we're not touching on. Like painting has to be expensive, and if you guys got them, hit us up. REELAF Real AF TV. Just look us up on what do we got? Twitter, Facebook, Instagram,
Yep.
and the good old fashioned
YouTube.
internet.
We're on them YouTubes,
Oh
but
yeah. You
I don't know.
comment on it in the YouTubes, dude. We'll
Yeah,
definitely get back on that.
we'll see it. Gives us alerts. So, hey, somebody said something.
Hey, all
Hey,
right. Engage
but
them.
and also, if you stuck around this long and you've been listening to some of the other podcasts, um, this is still a learning curve. We're still trying to get better. I just
For sure.
upgraded a mic, and tonight I just figured out how to make the internet better. So this is like we're me and Josh are actually having a conversation instead of the pauses between some of this stuff. So because we're not in the same room, it makes it a little bit harder. So
Mm-hmm.
um yeah, thanks
Yeah,
for
we
hanging with us and being patient and stuff. And maybe we should preface this at the beginning of one of the episodes in the future, but um we're
but
definitely we're trying to get better with every one of these. So
yeah, for sure. And I like putting it at the end here so whoever hangs in this long, it's kind of our thing, you know? You're you're hanging in there. We appreciate that and I'm glad that you said that, Tim, because we very much are learning this still, and as we're getting better, I hope that makes it so you would share this with your friends more, so more likely that you'd share it with your friends because it's getting better, it's sounding better, and I hope that's kind of what this these improvements do is I like that you're here with us now, but growing this is definitely something we want to do, and we're going to keep getting better. Again, this is it's just exactly what we were just talking about is hobbies. This is a passionate hobby thing for us right now. We're trying to
Yeah.
get better so that we can actually make it a profession for ourselves. And that is, again, the cost of a hobby is just doing it in the first place. It cost has this negative and only financial connotation to it, I think. And that's what I was trying to shatter here with the cost of a hobby is there's time, there's money, there's other investments that aren't just money numbers. It's kind of a
Right.
collaboration
Yep.
of everything. And that's kind of what we're doing with this podcast, is trying to collab all of that
Yeah, for
hobby
sure.
love into one spot.
Right. And it comes, like you said, with the time too. I mean, we both worked full days, and then we
Full
spent
days.
some family time, make some supper, eat some food. I put my
Mhm.
son to bed, and then once I put my son to bed, we record the podcast, and as soon as we're done with
Yep.
this, I'm going to bed so I can start it all over again.
Yeah, for real. I'm gonna.
But if you stick around long enough at the end, then we tell you the secrets, make you feel like family. So go ahead and get a pen and paper, because here comes my social security number. It's 4. No, I'm just kidding. You stick around this long, things get real weird. I've been up too late.
That's how we do it. This is the Real AF TV podcast, the show about fishing and random takes from the land of 10,000 lakes. Put a pin in it.
Boop.
Time to go to sleep.
Is that a pin noise?
No, here. This is the pin noise. Yeah, see, you drop a pin in a room. That's the noise it makes.
I don't know if you actually made a noise. I didn't hear shit.
No, I didn't do shit. I did it. It was that was the point. It was a bad joke.